Hi, my name is Laura, and welcome to my channel, Boundless Books. So my high school reunion is coming up soon, because I am old. And today, to make myself feel better about getting a little bit older, I thought I would celebrate some of the good times and look back at some of my favorite fantasy books, YA edition. So these are fantasy books that were really meaningful to me as I was growing up and really influenced my love of all things fantasy related. So let's get started. And real quick before I dive into this list, I just wanted to give a heartfelt thank you to Elena from Elena Reads Books. She gave me a shout out in one of her recent videos, and I just wanted to say thank you. It's really great to get some love. And I also wanted to say welcome to everyone who subscribed to my channel. And if you're not already subscribed to Elena's channel, I will include a link to it down below in the description box, so definitely make sure to check her out. Check her out.
Check her out. You're asking a lot.
The first book that I would like to talk about is an oldie but a goodie, and that is The Blue Sword by McKinely. This book was actually first published in 1982, so it's been around for a while, but it is still relevant and just as enjoyable as when it first came out. Because this is an older book, there have been a variety of cover arts associated with it, so here are just a few of them. But here's the cover that I know and love and that I remember from when I first picked this up in the 5th grade. When the novel starts, the recently orphaned Harry Crewe travels from Homeland, which is loosely based off of colonial England, to a Homelander outpost in the land of Istan, which is kind of based off of like India or somewhere in the Middle East, to stay with her brother Richard. When the Homelander outpost receives a visit from the Hill King Corlath, he recognizes that Harry Crewe is strong in the Hill People's magic, Kalar. And in recognition of this, Corlath actually kidnaps Harry and takes her back to his people for training. This is a very classic coming-of-age story. At the beginning of the novel, Harry is unaware of her magical capabilities, and throughout the course of the novel, develops both badass sword-fighting skills in addition to learning how to wield her Kalar magic. This story also has a sweet relationship between Harry Crewe and the seemingly fearsome Hill King Corlath. There is also a prequel story to The Blue Sword called Hero and the Crown, and it was published after The Blue Sword since it was such a popular novel. And that book just delves more into the magical backstory that is hinted at in The Blue Sword. Overall, I'd have to rate The Blue Sword a 5 out of 5 stars. I've gone back to it as an adult, just curious to see if my recollections of it held true, and it's definitely awesome and just as enjoyable even reading it as an adult. The next book series that I'd like to talk about is the His Dark Material series by Phillip Pulman. This series includes Golden Compass, or if you live outside of the US, you might know it as Northern Lights, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. This series was one of my absolute favorites when it first came out. So this series is loosely a retelling of John Milton's Paradise Lost, and when it first came out there was a lot of criticism that it portrayed religion rather negatively, also that some of the imagery in it was like a little violent for children. I personally never found that to be the case, and I absolutely adore this series, but it was definitely a thing that lots of parents were talking about when the series first came on the scene. And just to mention, if you have seen the Hollywood adaptation of The Golden Compass with Nicole Kidman in it, and you hated it, that's fair because it was terrible. You should still pick up these books because they're awesome and absolutely nothing like that terrible Hollywood movie. This series follows two young protagonists, Lyra and Will, who live in parallel universes. Yes, parallel universes. I absolutely love books or movies or anything that covers parallel universes. The first book in the series follows Lyra, who lives in an alternate version of Oxford, London, where everyone has a demon which follows them around constantly, and this demon is an embodiment of their spirit, and it takes the form of an animal. At the beginning of the novel, Lyra's uncle, Lord Azrael, embarks on a quest to the Northern Lights to learn more about dust, this mysterious material that seems to connect humans to their demons and may explain more about the inner workings of the universe. So overall, I would give this series a 5 out of 5 stars. It is just such awesome world building. The whole system of magic in it is super cool, and I fell in love with the main characters. This is definitely a series to check out if you haven't already. Yes, the books are a little on the long side for a YA series of novels, but they are 100% worth the investment in time. Next up is The Song of the Lioness Quartet by Tamara Pierce, and the first book in this series is Alana, The First Adventure.
Why did you say
because it's kind of a dorky name. And I apologize for laughing, but I do find the title of this book a little ridiculous. Also, the covers are clearly geared toward younger girls, but if you can kind of look past that, this is actually a really excellent high fantasy series for young adults. Alana of Trebold has always dreamed of becoming a knight. Her twin brother Thom, on the other hand, has always dreamed of becoming a sorcerer. To escape their gloomy fates and to follow their dreams, the twins switch places and Alana disguises herself as a young man named Alan of Trebold and goes off to the court in her brother's place to become a knight. At the court, Alana encounters charming thieves, ruthless bullies, and royalty. But most importantly of all, Alana discovers that she has a powerful magical healing gift. I was really captivated by the character of Alana when I first read these books. In the first novel, she's around 12 or 13, which was about the age I was when I first picked this series up, and I could totally see myself navigating the court and discovering my hidden magical ability. And I'm still waiting on that magical ability, by the way. Overall, I would give this series a 4.5 out of 5 stars. And that's just primarily due to the fact that the language in this series is slightly less elegant than in the first two series that I mentioned, but it is still very enjoyable. I've reread it as an adult and I still enjoyed it, so I would highly recommend picking this series up if you have not already. Next up on the list is Crown Duel and Court Duel by Sherwood Smith. When the series was originally published, Crown Duel and Court Duel were two separate novels, but now when you buy Crown Duel, it usually is an omnibus edition that contains both stories. So this series might just be a hidden gem that absolutely no one knows about, but I've never heard anyone on BookTube mention it before, and I just randomly discovered this series while roaming through the library in my youth. On their father's deathbed, the Countess Meliara and her brother Brand promise to defend the kingdom against the greed of the evil king Galdran. As the title of these novels implies, this series spans battlefields and ballrooms as the two siblings fight to protect their kingdom. Many characters in this novel have mistaken loyalties and hidden identities, and many of Mel's enemies become her friends later on in the novel. Overall, I would give this series a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's extremely fast-paced and engaging. Meliara was such a cool character. There's a lot of fighting, and I always enjoy a kick-ass heroine. This series actually reminds me of how much I enjoyed the first two books in the Throne of Glass series, the only difference being that I actually liked the way these two books concluded. And the last series that I would like to mention on this list is one that I did not read as a young adult, but actually read as an adult, and I really wish that it had been out when I was younger. And that is the Seven Realms series by Cinda Williams Chima. I actually talked about this series briefly in a recent video because Cinda Williams Chima is actually writing additional novels in this series that follow characters one generation later, which is very exciting. The first book in the series is called The Demon King, and the novel follows a young man named Hans, or Cuffs Alistair as he is called, because of the mysterious silver cuffs that encircle his wrists and magically grow with him, however he cannot remove them. The novel also follows the heir of the Grey Wolf throne, Reza Anna Maria. At the beginning of the novel, Hans comes into possession of an ancient, powerful amulet linked to the legendary Demon King. The novel switches perspective from Hans, Reza, and a lot of the other characters that inhabit this world, from the people of Fell's Castle to the clanspeople who have taken in Hans as sort of his adopted family. What's great about this series is that so many of the characters are well developed. Because the perspective jumps between various characters, you really get a sense of all the people that inhabit this world beyond just Hans and Reza, who are the protagonists. Overall, I would have to give this series a 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love it. It kind of has a little bit of everything. It has a very detailed magic system. Also, in the later books, there's a whole period where Hans goes off to magic school, which kind of reminds me of Harry Potter, but just set in high fantasy world, and it is so awesome. While this is marketed as a YA book, I read this as an adult. I also recommended this to my 60-year-old father, and he loved it. So this is definitely a series that is perfect for all ages. And the last book, which I gotta mention, but I'm not gonna go into details about it because everyone knows what this series is about, is Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. This was the series that really made me just absolutely fall in love with fantasy and with reading in general. I started reading it when I was around Harry Potter's age in the first book, and it just captivated me. My all-time favorite dream was to discover that I lived in a world where magic actually exists. and that I was in fact not just a boring muggle, but really a wizard who could do cool things. And if for some reason you have not picked up this series, what are you doing? Go out and read it. And if you have read it, which is probably most of you, and you haven't heard the audiobooks of Harry Potter, you should 100% go out and listen to those, because Jim Dale, who narrates that series, is fabulous. So there you have it. Those are some of my favorite YA fantasy novels. Now obviously this list is not exhaustive because there are just far too many to name, but definitely let me know in the comment section down below what some of your favorite YA fantasy novels are. And please be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and to subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. Until next time, my name is Laura, and thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. And I'm still waiting to discover my magical ability. Wingardium Leviosa!